Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm starting a new card making series and this is going to be called Card Making 101. So what we're going to be doing is in some videos we're going to be stripping down card making and paper crafting to the basics. These are going to be perfect for beginners if you are new to card making and you need sort of somewhere to start and you want that sort of basic information, but there is going to be something for everyone as well, whether you are a beginner or you are more advanced in your crafting. So we're going to be talking about different products, different ways of using products. We're going to be looking at tools that are kind of essential to card making and paper crafting, those sort of additional tools which might make life a little bit easier and kind of elevate your cards and your projects that you are creating. So there is going to be something here for everybody. In today's video we're going to be looking at some basic card bases. That's what I've got here in front of me. I do already have a video, I think it's from last year or the year before, talking about slimline cards, so I will link that video. That talks about the 3 different sizes of sort of DL slimline cards that you can create, the mats and layers that you can use, and then talking about the envelopes as well, which you can create on the We Are Memory Keepers 123 punch board or the envelope punch board. So to begin with, we're going to talk about different card base sizes. So we're going to start off with some square cards that you can use. So these are all going to be pretty much typical UK sized cards here. These are the ones that you'll find most commonly. So in the square range you can have an 8x8 inch or you've got a 6x6. There are other sizes from a square card base that you can purchase, but these two seem to be kind of the most classic sizes that you can get. As an example of another size, you can do a 4x4 inch card. These are perfect for small note cards. If you don't have a lot of patterned paper, if you don't have very big toppers, things like that, that makes these kind of cards perfect. And if you just want to create a small little note card, again, a really fantastic size. But these two really are your most sort of common square sizes that you will see. So with these and pretty much all the card bases, the next thing to talk about is whether you're going to go pre-made or you're going to make them yourself. So there are advantages and disadvantages to both of these. So for cards like this, which I'm going to say with the square range, and a 5x7, which we'll look at, I would opt to go for a pre-made card base. So there's lots of brands out there where you can buy pre-made card bases. So some of the positives with a pre-made is going to be that you can buy a bigger quantity and it's not going to cost you as much, and also then that you're going to get an equal amount of envelopes for the cards that you are creating, sending out. One of the downsides to buying a pre-made, and this really depends on the brand that you are purchasing, sometimes the card bases aren't going to be true to size. So the card base brand that I use is Craft UK. They do a wide range of card bases and other products as well that you can purchase, but with those I find that the card bases are true to size. So for example, we can measure this and I know that it is going to be 6x6 inches. Pretty much on the dot, and then you're going to get an envelope which will be slightly larger, which will fit this card base in. Now with some of the other brands I have found in the past that the actual card base isn't quite true to size and it might be slightly smaller. It could be that the envelope is 6x6 rather than the card base, so do watch out for that. Pre-made, there are pros and cons, but with certain sizes I personally choose to go with a pre-made card. Now you can create the card base yourself, and I'm going to be showing you within a 6 size card how you can create that by hand and how I'm happy to do that with that particular size. But with the square cards and then maybe a 5x7 as well, I will always choose to make pre-made, because if you're going to make these by hand you need to have a larger piece of cardstock. So for example, to create a 6x6 inch, you're going to need a piece of cardstock that's at least 12 inches wide. So if you were to use a piece of 12x12 inch cardstock, you could get 2 of these 6x6 card bases out of that piece, and that might be okay for you. But again, it's then having the stock of 12x12 papers to create those card bases. When it comes to the 8x8, you're going to need to have a piece of cardstock that is 16 inches wide. which, you know, I certainly don't have any cardstock like that. You're maybe going more into A3 territory and you're not really getting much more out of that cardstock. So that for me is the downside for hand making card bases of these kind of sizes, because you just need that larger cardstock. But if you, with the upsides of making the card bases yourself, you can make them out of different coloured cardstock if you wanted to. You can create sort of more custom sizes. There are negatives and positives to both sides of them, but like I said, for more standard larger sizes like these, I would rather buy pre-made. For an A6, I'm happy to make them myself. So that's looking at the square. So the next size you can go to, again, a very classic UK size, is a 5 by 7 inches. So again, these can be portrait or landscape as well, depending on what you are using the card for, what your decoration is. If you was to make this yourself as well, then you will need to have a piece of cardstock which is 10 inches by 7, which you could get out of a A4 sheet of cardstock. But certainly for this size as well, I would opt to buy a pre-made card base, because then I'm getting the envelopes and my card base is ready to go. So the next card base I have here, this is a DL sized card base. So this is like a standard letter envelope size here in the UK. This is roughly 4 inches by about 8¼ inches tall. I'm not going to talk too much about this because I do have another video which I will link to, which talks about the 3 different sizes of slimline cards that you can create, much like this video. The sizes might be slightly different, but the principles still stand the same for the DL. I chose to move from a slimline card base, which is usually about 3½ inches by 8, I believe it was. That's more of an American size. I decided to go with the DL sizes because, again, you get slightly bigger real estate, so you have more space to create on your card. So those are some starter card bases that you can go for, but probably one of the most common that we have here in the UK is an A6 size card. So between the UK and the US, this will vary. So in the US, you do have an A2 size card, which is their standard, and here in the UK we have A6. The idea with these 2 sizes is you can create 2 card bases from the sizes based on that country's A4 equivalent. So here in the UK, an A6 card is basically made from a piece of A4 cardstock, and you can get 2 card bases from an A4 sheet of paper. For the A6, again, these are sizes that you can buy in a pre-made card base, which comes with envelopes, but I do like to make my own. Certainly when I was starting off looking at this size to determine whether it was a size I wanted to start including within my kind of repertoire of cards that I created, I was making my own, and then I just purchased separate envelopes to go with A6 size cards. And again, I'll leave some links to the products that I purchased in the description box down below. So I'm actually going to make this A6 card base with you. So there's 2 ways that I could tell you to do this. You can simply just fold your cardstock in half, and then you can cut it down the middle, and that will make an A6 size card. But actually what I like to do, just to make my life a little bit easier, is I like to cut my A4 sheet down very, very slightly so I can get then even 1/4 inch sizes. So this is optional. You absolutely don't have to do this. This is something that I do just to make my life a little bit easier when I'm creating my mats and layers. So for this, you will need a slightly larger guillotine, or of course you can measure with a ruler and a pencil and then either cut it with scissors or a craft knife. But I'm using this here. This is the large Crafter's Companion guillotine. And basically I'm gonna cut a small amount off both the width and the length. So currently this is measuring to be 8¼ inches wide, but I actually take this down to 8 inches. So at 8 inches, I'm just gonna trim that there. And then off the length of this, so this is just under 11¾ inches, I'm gonna take this down to 11½ inches. So you can see we're taking very, very little off the sheet, but it's going to make it easier to create our mats and layers. So now I have my A4 cardstock cut down, I can decide whether I'm going to make a top folding card or a side folding card here, and that will depend on where I'm going to have my score line and where I'm going to actually trim this down. So with this particular trimmer, which we'll talk about in a future video, they do have score lines on it already, and it comes with a scoring tool. So I'm just going to score on this guillotine. So if I want to have a side folding card, which I do, I'm going to score the length of the card. So I'm going to pop this in and I'm going to score right down the 4 inches mark. Just like so. And then I'm going to rotate it and I'm going to trim this down to be 5 3/4 inches, which is half. Now I've got 2 card bases here, both with those score marks, so I can literally just fold this in half. I'm going to use a bone folder here, which we can talk about in the Essential Craft Tools video, and we can just burnish that crease there, so it's going to sit nice and flush. So let's fold this one again. We're going to burnish this crease, and the reason we are burnishing the crease is so then it sits nice and flat and you have a really lovely crease in there. And that is then your 2 A6 card bases that we created from one piece of A4 cardstock. So these 2 are now going to be easier for me to calculate my mats and layers on here, where I really don't need to think too much about it. So the main reason why I say that about making it easier when it comes to mats and layers is because I don't want that portion to be what's taken me the longest amount of time, is to actually work out exactly what I want my mats and layers to be. I want to know that my card base is 4 inches by 5 3/4 inches, and I know then I'm going to make my first mat and layer is going to be 3 3/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches, and I just go down in 1/4 inch increments, and it just makes things easier. That's not what I want to focus my time on. I want to spend my time on the decoration for my cards rather than working out my mats and layers. So the last thing to mention about the card bases is for these here, the cardstock that I'm using. With this, I am using a 300 GSM cardstock. This is the Crafter's Companion Multipurpose cardstock. I find this a really great all-around cardstock to use, and it means then that my card bases are nice and strong. So the last thing to mention regarding the actual card bases themselves is you can purchase them in different colours as well as different sizes. So here I have 2 craft, brown craft card bases, and we have a pastel one as well. So this one here again is an A6 size card. This came in a pack with different pastel colours, and you can get vibrant colours as well, lots of different variations, and these of course come with matching envelopes as well. And then another version of the card bases you can get is using this lovely craft cardstock. So this here is a 5x7 card, and again we have it in the 6x6 as well. So again they come with matching brown envelopes, and it just really depends what kind of card you're creating, what your style is of cards, as well as to whether you use white, whether you use craft, or whether you use something that is coloured. It's all going to depend on what you are creating. So now we're going to look a little bit closer at the 3 sort of common sizes of cards that I do create. So we've got our A6, our 5x7 and our 6x6. So again, with these, if I want to create something with these 2 that's larger, again I've got that larger real estate, and I say that as means you have more surface area to add more mats and layers, to add more techniques, bigger toppers, bigger sentiments, things like that. If you've got larger or you want to put more stuff on your cards, picking a bigger card base is going to be better than picking something smaller where everything looks maybe a little bit more cramped. But again, with an A6, if I have something that isn't as big that I want to put on a card, then I can pick that smaller card base. So that is how I go about picking the correct card base for the project that I am creating. So I'm going to show you an example here, and we're going to talk about mats and layers. So this is a card that I've created here on my channel. If you're interested in this particular card, then I will leave a link to this video. But this is a 5x7 inch card. You can see here that I have 2 mats and layers. So we have this holographic layer, and then we have this embossed panel is another layer. But I have this very large heart on here. I wanted to have it slightly off the page, so again, this will be determined by what it is that you want to be the main focal point of your card, but I wanted to have slightly it coming off the edge just as a design choice, but also then because it was bigger, I needed to have that bigger card base. So I had a choice as to whether to use this stamp on the 5x7 or on the 6x6. Now, because it's wider than it is longer, and again I wanted to have it chopped off, I thought it would fill up better on a 5x7 card base than on a 6x6. But again, you can easily transfer this design onto a 6x6. I'm just going to have more space here. So with this one, again, we're talking then mattes and layers. So we have 2 mattes and layers on here, and for me personally, that is my personal choice, that more often than not I will have 2 mattes and layers on a project. I will have my first matte, which in this example is the holographic, and this could be coloured cardstock, it could be mirror card, the holographic, anything like that. That just helps to separate the background panel, which is this embossed panel here. It's going to bring it off of our white card base. So because I've got a white background here, that would very much just get lost in with our card base. But by adding this matte and layer, you're adding an extra bit of depth onto your card and a little bit more interest. You can pick out a colour from your project and that will help frame it nicely, but it does just lift the background piece from your card base really, really nicely. So again, my typical card making style would be to add 2 onto here, but again, it really depends on what the project is that I am creating. So let's go down the line and talk about the sizes that I use. Now, I like I said, to do as easy matte and layering as possible. So let's start with our A6 size card and talk about those mattes and layers. So for this, again, like I said, we're coming down in 1/4 of an inch increments. So my first matte is going to be 5.5 by 3 3/4 inches. So we've got this really lovely white border around here. You can change this if you want to have thinner borders and do 1/8 of an inch as an alternative, but I like the 1/4 of an inch size difference because it gives you this really nice border here. So this will, if you get this in the center, that will be a 1/8 of an inch border all the way around. Or again, if you use the 1/8 of an inch, then you're going much smaller than that again. But this is kind of the sizing that I do like. Then for my next layer, and this is usually my background layer, so if I'm going to add some decoration, if I'm going to use an embossing folder, something like that, it's usually on this layer here. But for the next size, this is going to be 5.25 inches by 3.5 inches. So pretty much the size that I'm working with in terms of the size where I'm going to put my decoration, my sentiment, etc., is going to be this size here, which is the 5.25 by 3.5 inches. That's the size that I've got to work with. So again, anything smaller, if you've got any smaller sentiments, smaller toppers, it's going to be perfect for a card base of this size. So let's move that to the side and we'll go for the 6x6. So again, I'm picking either of these 2 sizes. If I want something, again, that's square, maybe if I've got a piece of patterned paper that I want to use on this is going to be perfect with a 6x6. If I want to make it very symmetrical, if I want a symmetrical look to my card, again, this is going to be perfect. So with this, again, this is a 6x6 inch, very, very easy in terms of those mattes and layers. We are dropping our first matte down to 5 3/4 inches, and again we get that really lovely border. And then our background piece and our top layer, this is going to be 5.5 inches, and again you get that really lovely border there. So as I said, depending on what kind of toppers, what colours you're using, you will be able to have this, what we've got as our black layer on this example, you can have that as a patterned piece, you can have that as a coloured cardstock, and that can match in with the theme of your card. And then the final card size we're going to talk about for the mats and layers again is the 5x7. So you've seen this example here. So we had the larger panel, but again, it's not needed on that symmetrical size. So we are going for the 5x7. So the sizes on here for our first layer is going to be 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. And then our second layer, or our background piece, is going to be 4.5 by 6.5. And again, with all of these examples, if we bring them all back in again, you can see just how lovely of a border that is and how much it's going to lift that background piece. So your mats and layers are a very easy way to elevate your cards by not really adding too much bulk onto this. You're not adding too much in the way of having to come up with another element to go on your card. It's just a really subtle way of elevating your cards, making them look better, more professional in a really easy way. So I'm going to show you 3 examples of cards that I've created in these 3 different sizes that have different mats and layers. So we've talked about having 2 mats and layers, but what if you wanted to have a single mat and layer? And I've got an additional example here that I showed you with the 4x4. So this has just got 1 layer on here. It's just got this background paper, and that is going to be in the 3 3/4 inches square. But you can see how this white piece here doesn't necessarily lift from your card base down here because it's a different color. You can see the difference, but with here, with that background of the patterned paper being white, it doesn't jump off the page quite as much. But showing you an example again of a single layer, so you've only got 1 mat and layer on here, and this is a recent card that I made here on my channel, and because we have 3 really busy patterns here, and even though we've only got 1 layer of cardstock, it's lifted nicely off that background because it's not just blending in with our white card base here. So the reason that I picked a 6x6 inch for this particular design is because I had these lovely panels of patterned paper that I really wanted to show off, and I wanted to be able to have that bigger size. But also you can see just how big my sentiment is here, and again, I didn't want to pop it onto a smaller card because it would probably be too big for that smaller card, but also just a combination of that patterned paper, adding in our little embellishments here, and then this big chunky sentiment that I wanted to really stand out. The 6x6 was the best option for this card. So again, when you're coming to pick your card base size, think about what you're putting on there. How much open space do you want to have? Whether it's like this one where we're showing off the patterned paper, or this one where we've got all of this additional space around here. We've filled it and made it more interesting with an embossing folder and splatter, but we do still have that open space. So do consider that when you are looking at your card bases. Another example, and using different shaped mats and layers, which we're going to talk about. This is a 5x7 card. This has got the 2 mats and layers, so we have this lovely pink color of cardstock here, which is matching in with the theme that or the color scheme, should I say, that we've got going on with our card here. So with this, we've used our first mat and layer is that classic size, so 6 3/4 by 4 3/4, and we've added then our second layer in here. So this is our what I'm going to call a background panel, but actually I've stamped directly onto this and then done some watercoloring, so to make it more interesting, and it doesn't have to just be, you know, squares or rectangles, you know, with this, with the sharp corners on it. You can do different shapes. You could just round the corner with a corner punch. That will add a different look to your card, or then you can use nesting dies and create different shapes. So this here is a scalloped edge rectangle, which fits perfectly. You can see more of our pink cardstock underneath, and again, that's a design choice. If you want to be able to see that, then this is going to work nicely. And then lastly, so again, talking about real estate, it is dependent on, you know, the card size you're creating. So this isn't a A6 card, this is a US A2 card that I wanted to show you just that difference because I did have it to hand. So with this, they are virtually similar. So if we just hold one over the other, you can see that the UK A6 card is slightly taller but not quite as wide. But this principle still applies for an A6 card. So we've got our mattes and layers here. So we've got the gold as our first layer, then we've got our embossed black as then our background piece. And what you can do as well, if you want to have more of a white border, you can then bring your sizes down. So maybe you want to start on the A6 card, maybe you want to start at 5 1/4 by 3 1/2 and bring that down again. So you don't have to do 1/4 of an inch, like I said, you can do 1/8 of an inch, you could do 1/2 an inch if you wanted to. It really depends what kind of look you're going for. And you can see this butterfly on here. So if I put this on either the 5x7 or the 6x6, you know, I'd have to add a lot more detail onto these cards to kind of fill it up a little bit. But by having a bigger topper, being the butterfly, on a smaller card, it means then it's going to fill that card up much better, and then it's not going to have quite as much open space, not sort of too much open space. So the next thing we're going to talk about is creating those shaped mats and layers. So you can see here we had this scalloped edged rectangle, and that is by using a nesting die. So a lot of companies will have their own range of nesting dies, and they will come in different sizes and different shapes with different decorations. Now, what I tend to use is the nesting dies by Creative Craft Products, and I will leave a link in the description box down below. That is one of Craft Stash's like home brands, like their own brand, and they do a great variety of sizes and different decorative sort of elements to their nesting dies. Now, you can use these nesting dies to create card bases, but we're going to talk about shaped cards in a separate video, and I'm going to show you how you can make them. But for now, I just want to talk about the different kind of designs that they have for their nesting dies, which can add some really great interest to your cards. So they do, of course, just the plain standard, so you can get the rectangles with just a straight edge, but they also do this lovely variety of shaped edges. So starting with this one here, they do a stitched edge detail. So here you have, these are the DL size rectangles, you have still that cutting edge, but then you have this lovely stitched detail which goes all the way around as well, which is great for adding very subtle detail if you want to keep the edges straight and everything lined up nicely, but it's just adding that extra little bit of detail. And I am planning to do a video as well on how to get the most out of your basic dies, like your nesting dies. But for now, we have the stitched detail. This one is relatively new. So this is the inverted scallop oval dies. So you can see here that the way that they're going to work is they're going to leave that scalloped detail in your cardstock. Now again, we're going to look at this in another video sort of in more detail, and I have shown them recently in some videos as well. But when you die cut these, it is going to leave this scalloped detail. So if you're creating an aperture card, then these are going to be perfect. But you've got the inverted scallop. Then you have the regular scallop. So these are the rectangle scalloped nesting dies, which is what I used on this card here. And again, then you have this lovely sized, sort of the largest one that's got the largest scallop. And as they come down, and this is where I think they're really clever, they come down, but they also scale down the scallops as well. So you don't have this tiny size, but with these gigantic scallops in there. And then their newest addition to their nesting dies range is these filigree designs. So I've got a few of these now. These are the squares, and the largest size here is 8x8, and then they do come down in size. So you can see lots of ways of using this. If you wanted to, you could get your 8x8 card and you could die cut every single mat and layer and have, you know, all of these on your card. Again, it really depends what you're going for, but these are great because you have basically all of the in-between sizes that you might need for your card projects. So again, lots of variation there, and by using nesting dies like this that have, you know, these wonderful added details, again, you don't have to add any more to your card, but you can simply jazz up your mats and layers in a very, very easy way. So the last thing to really talk about in this basic card bases video is those envelopes. So again, as I said at the beginning, when you buy the pre-made cards, they do come with their envelopes. So here we have the three different main sizes, 5x7, 6x6 and A6. So with the A6 card bases, because I've made them myself, I've just purchased a pack of basic envelopes for these. So you can buy them separately, but of course it's just easier then to buy them in with those card bases. But if you want to make these card bases yourself, you can purchase those as well. So they do fit wonderfully. So these two here are from the packs which have got the pre-made cards, and you can see you've got a lot of space in there. If you're adding lots of layers and you're adding dimension, you do have that space as well. And there are tons of tutorials out here on YouTube on how to create different envelopes, box envelopes, lots of different variations of what you can create there depending on the kind of project that you have created. And I do have a video here on my channel, which again I will link to, which shows you how to create different sized envelopes on the 123 punch board by We Are Memory Keeper. So do check that video out if you've got that punch board or you do want to have a go at making your own envelopes. But again, you can see just how easily these fit in here into the envelopes, and you're all ready to go. If you're selling your cards or if you are posting them, then you've got those ready to go. And the last envelope I just wanted to show you is this handmade one. This is one that I made on the We Are Memory Keepers punch board. And the advantage then of creating your own envelopes is you can make an envelope custom if you've made a custom sized card. Also, you can use different patterned papers if you want to use them up, or if you want to match with the card that you've created. You can decorate the envelope, you can create coloured card bases, you can create them out of watercolour cardstock, and you know, you could really decorate your envelope through envelope art, which is a very big thing as well. So there's lots of examples on YouTube of different ways of creating different kinds of envelopes, but again, it really just depends what kind of card and project that you have created. But again, as a very basic you know, basic for beginners, talking about card bases, I do think that one of the easiest and probably a more cost-effective way is to buy pre-made card bases with your envelopes. Then you have everything that you need ready to start creating your cards. So that is going to be it for this video. I hope that you have learned something from this video. And again, we're going to be starting this new Card Making 101 series. This is more of a beginner side of things. Again, we're really stripping back card making to kind of show you how you can elevate your cards. Again, whether you're a beginner and you're new to card making, or whether you are more advanced and you just maybe want to pick up some more hints and tips. So please leave me a comment down below if you find this video useful. If you do have any more questions, there are more videos to come in this series. So if you aren't currently a subscriber to my channel, please hit that subscribe button, the notification bell, so you are aware of when I upload a new video, and you'll be able to follow along in this series. If you got anything from this video, whether it was some hints and tips, or whether you just watched it for pure enjoyment, then please hit that thumbs up button as well, because it does really help to support my channel. So that is going to be it for today's video. Thanks very much for watching, and join me in the next Card Making 101 video.